I am here at Adler Planetarium. I think that's at least what it's called. If you don't yet know where I am in Chicago at the former site of Meigs Field, which was demolished about 15 years ago in the middle of the night in March of 2003. Many of you may remember this building behind me if you played Flight Simulator about 15 years ago, anytime in the late 90s, early 2000s, departing from runway 36 of Meigs Field, which was the default departure the default departure in Microsoft Flight Simulator as we took off and flew right over this. So I'm here at Meigs Field, gonna do a couple live videos. Hope you guys enjoy it, and talk to you more soon. All right, Matt again. I am back here at Meigs Field, just south of the planetarium, which I showed you a little bit earlier. I'm gonna move over here and actually see it a little bit better through the trees. So if you were to look at a map of Meigs Field back in the day, prior to 2003, you would notice just on the northeast part of Northerly Island, there's a little bit of an inlet with a beach. That's this beach right here. Kind of makes a little bit of a curve. And if it was back in 15 years ago when the airport was still operating, looking over here, about maybe 50 to 100 feet to my west would be the end of runway 36 and the start of runway 18. And so again, this is entirely turned into a park now. As you can see, people are kind of running through, and I'm gonna actually walk through the entire park here pretty shortly and end up at the control tower, which last time I was here was actually still standing as the only remnant of the park. So for those of you guys that don't know, this airport was demolished in the middle of the night in March 2003. I was a huge fan of this airport when I started flying. I'd always kind of wished it still existed, so Rob and I could have done a trip out here. It would have been awesome to do a touch and go. But it doesn't exist. Last time I was here, which is about a year and a half ago, I had the opportunity to talk to a pilot who was kind of just hanging out here on the beach, and he told me a ton of stories about what it was like to fly here at this airport. You know, the 60 plus years it was actually operating until March 2003. But the middle of the night, bulldozers came in March 2003, bulldozed the runway, drew a bunch of X's through it. And airplanes actually had to take off. They had to depart on the taxiway to get out of the airport. There had been some long-standing tension about whether the airport should exist or not. It had closed at least once prior to that. I'm not an expert in Meigs Field by any means, but I know that there was a AOPA article about the airport closing in the early 90s and then reopening. So there had always been some tension about having this airport downtown. But now, as you can see behind me, and I'll loop around. Again, I am probably standing right now at the start of runway 18. This is where 18 would have been. So I'm at the north part of the island. It's really awesome. And what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna walk to where the start of 36 was, the approach end of 36, which will probably take me a few minutes. And then I'll hop on and live again and show you guys what that looks like. And again, we'll end up at the control tower. All right, taking a break here. Jet flying over, based on the direction it's going, it's actually on final into Midway, which is just to my west. This is a great view right here. So where I'm standing right now would be about 2/3 down the runway if you had departed on 36. So you can see the kind of the view of the city. So we're all familiar with this from Flight Simulator. Just kind of seeing the city off to our northwest here as we were taking off. So again, the planetarium there in the distance on the right side of my screen. Just an awesome view. Looks like they've got a concert venue set up here. So I'm gonna do a full 360 and a little bit of a duck kind of hanging out right there. So it looks like there's only one path to get down to the southern tip of the island. So I'm walking down there now, kind of making my way, but I thought you'd want to see just how kind of scenic this island has become. I was here maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and it still had a long way to go. Might have even been longer than that. But every time I come to the island, again, my most recent time about a year and a half ago, always improving. So again, I don't know the whole politics of the situation in Chicago anymore. My girlfriend just moved here, about whether there's still support for Meigs Field or not, if people like the island or not. But I always like to make it a goal to come out here when I'm visiting and All right, another Southwest jet there on final to midway. I have made it to the west tip of Northerly Island. Unfortunately, the trail is partially closed, so it makes one full loop. But they've got it closed. I was talking to somebody who basically said that the reason for that is that it's starting to crumble. It's very obvious that they've made some man-made waterways here because where the runway used to be, there's now, it looks like 2 small ponds. Maybe they converge into one at some point. But about a half, maybe a third to a half of the southern portion of this island is now covered in water. But I'm gonna walk up here. I'm gonna give you guys a little bit of a view. So here is the southernmost tip. Awesome. What's up, Trot? Brad, thanks for joining. All right, so we've got the city of Chicago in the distance, and then there's the planetarium. That's where I was, that's where I started, way out there. So what I did is I took, well, ForeFlight was useless, but I took an old taxi diagram of this airport and overlaid it with a map, and I was able to figure out that pretty much right where I'm standing right here is where the planes would have made their final left turn to taxi onto 36 for departure. So I'm kind of like on the old taxiway right now. So just so historical. There's just nothing left of this airport at all 15 years later, except for the tower, which is where I'll be doing my final live post. Now it's funny, it's about 89, 90 degrees out here, and I'm basically right underneath the sun. And lots of humidity out here, so I'm glad I'm in a black t-shirt. I'm carrying a backpack around. I forgot water. I'll be okay, don't worry. And there's a lot of water right here too, from the lake. But anyway, the point being is it reminded me of a story of when Rob and I fly. It's like my largest fear is when, you know, we depart and he's like, my flight controls, and I say, your flight controls, and he says, my flight controls. And he goes to touch the throttle, and he's like, oh man, because like I have sweaty palms, I sweat a lot. So I'm sweating a lot, it's fine, whatever. So one more view of this. Just such a great view. Now I'm technically on the bridge where it said closed, so I don't want to go too far. There's another plane above, gigantic plane landing midway. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to walk over to where the tower is, and you'll kind of see where it's standing in relation to where I am right now. And it looks pretty much unchanged, and it looks exactly how I remember it in Flight Simulator. And I know some of you have commented that you actually had the opportunity to actually fly here in real life. Ed, thanks a lot for your comment. Ed mentioned that the final flight he took with his father prior to his father passing away was at Meigs Field, and you know, he said apparently he almost went into the water. You know, I assume that that was just kind of a little bit of a trial and error, learning how to fly kind of thing. Ed, you'll have to expand on that. Sorry for your loss, but thank you for sharing the story. I've received some other comments from people that you know, have mentioned the fact that they had the opportunity to fly here. So I really appreciate everybody tuning in, and all right, so I'm not quite done yet. There's the final close-up of the tower. I just went over there, took a couple pictures. The reason I wanted to hop back on Instagram Live is because I found out some information. So I went into the building here and talked to a couple people, and they said that they don't do tours of the tower. In fact, it's loaded with asbestos. It's completely blocked off. It's locked off. They don't have keys. The whole building's been condemned. And there's a chance it could be torn down. They don't know, because obviously it's a historic landmark. They want to keep it as long as possible. But I'm glad I got a chance to come out here today, because who knows when the next time I'm going to be out here is. So again, I'll give you one more view of it. And then let's come on down here and do an awesome panorama of the city. just because it is such a good view. All right, well, again, if you're not following us yet on Instagram, you're watching this, so you should be. Follow us on Instagram, we're on Twitter. Head over to YouTube, search us. We don't have a channel yet because Google won't let us till we get like 1,000 likes, so make sure you like us. Let's see what else. We're not on anything else except Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, so follow us on all three and you'll have more awesome posts like this. Thanks again for watching. Take care.